What is up, guys? Just got back from a 5 mile run. Just been sparring the dog in there. Broke his jaw in 5 places. He was massive dog. Biggest dog you've ever seen, 15 stone. But luckily for me, I've got speed and power that defies the laws of physics. So, broke his jaw and guessed his weight. But anyway, today we're going to talk about Cat A prisoners. Some of the people that I've met along the way when I was in a Cat A prison. Doncatraz when it first opened. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I've just finished watching 24 Hours in Police Custody from yesterday. I taped it and I watched it this morning. And absolutely disgusting. If you're unaware, this guy, don't know his name, don't care. He's killed his entire family, murdered his mother, his sister, his brother with a knife and a shotgun. And the people below him in the flats, they heard it all going off. So they phoned the police and he just walked out of the flat. And then the next morning, they've gone looking for anybody really who looks suspicious. And they found him wandering around, mumbling to himself. It clearly looks like he's on the spectrum. And they've arrested him and he was saying, it wasn't murder. So they knew it was him straight away. And they've put him in the cells. And his biggest concern, his priority was doing his hair. He was asking for a comb and just didn't seem bothered that he just killed his entire family. He seemed more interested in washing his face and looking good for the court, which, just disgusting, horrible people. And anyway, they've caught him and they started delving into his past and looking at the videos he'd uploaded to social media, and he was obsessed with a game called Walking Dead, which is a good game, to be honest. I played it myself, where you play this little girl called Clementine, and you have to make decisions to look after her with all the zombies around, and these decisions that you make affect how the game goes. And he was obsessed with this little girl, and he was making videos saying, I'm going to have to execute my family because they've made the wrong decision for Clementine. So he's a fucking nut job. And the more they delved, they found out not only was he a killer, he was a pedo, he had loads of kiddie stuff on his computers, he was obsessed with mass shootings and killings, and that little Sandy Hook little nerd. Oh, the horrible, I really hate school shooters with passion, and I always say there needs to be more for these guys, because he'll probably go to jail, he'll join a fucking Quran group, whatever they are, and they'll look after him, and he'll live a somewhat decent life in jail, if there's such a thing, because they'll look after him. Whereas I think they should just give him to the cartels, let them get Funky Town on him and Ghost Rider his ass. That's what I'd do. Get medieval on him. But yeah, he's locked up in prison, he's got life. And they found out that he bought this shotgun by using a fake ID. You need a gun certificate in England, don't you? And I don't know how he did it, but he's faked this thing. I put his photo on it, and the bloke, he thought he was selling it to a legit guy. And he says there was no red flags, no warnings. But yeah, the guy's a complete nut. And he was just going to go to an elementary school. He's got it all planned out. He even did videos with a bit of wood, pretending that was his gun, how he was going to do it. And I just never understand it. Going into a school full of children with a gun, and all that destruction and pain. I saw one yesterday on YouTube about a guy went into a shop just for no reason, just popping people with a shotgun, and all the people in the shop, I spoke about it yesterday, was all too fat, they couldn't run away. And they was like waddling and falling, and they couldn't stand up because they was too fat, and he was just popping them up. And there were afterwards, the aftermath, he was in the car saying, I want to see my daughter, and there's all these people with wounds, crying, screaming, and you just think all that, because it's not only his family, it's his victim's family, and then their family's family, and then it's just such a big shockwave of misery and pain and suffering for what? Just because some knobhead is a fucking knobhead. So I'll never understand it. But anyway, they've caught him. They prevented this from happening. Apparently he was stood outside a school one day and someone went past and said, you alright? And he just was looking at the school. They didn't even acknowledge him. So we got really lucky with that one. with concerning the kids and the schools, and plus he was into all the pedo stuff. So yeah, fuck this guy. Hopefully they'll put him on normal location, and a couple of homeboys can figure out who he is. And well, his face is all over in it, but I think they'll probably put him in isolation until it's all quietened down, and then look after him, you know, like they do. But anyway, yeah, he'll be in a Cat A jail. Now, every time I talk about Doncatraz being a Cat A jail, when it first opened, I know it was a Cat A jail. I was fucking there. But there's always people in the comments saying, oh, never been to a Cat A. Donny's never been a Cat A. And I started doubting myself, you know, thinking, have I got it wrong here? And so I Googled it, and it said, in the first thing that came up, it says Doncaster, HMP Doncaster, has never been a Cat A prison. I was like, I'm fucking tripping here. I must be losing my marbles. And then I read further down in the same sentence, it said, and in 2001, it got recategorized from a Cat A to a Cat B. So I'm like, well, you're saying it weren't a Cat A, but then you're saying it was. But I know it was. I distinctively remember. And I messaged a few of my mates, and they said, yeah, it definitely was a Cat A when it first opened. And I remember because every time you'd go on a visit, you would have to go into an office to show them your ID card, to show who you were, and then they'd like jot you down and walk you to your visit with Alsatians, and it was high security, maximum security. And then it used to have a wall with all the Cat A inmates on it, you know, and whenever there was moving one of the Cat A's, they had to fucking take them, get all the police surrounding them, and give them an escort to court and back. And so yeah, it was definitely a Cat A. And I remember some of the people who I met in there, which is what I'm going to talk about today. On the Fringe, when it first opened, man, it was absolutely mental. And anybody who says otherwise, either lying to try and look tough, you know, weren't that bad, or they just weren't there. It was ruthless, mate. 90%, or I'd probably say like 90% of the violence I saw in prison was in Doncatraz back then. And there was people, I remember one kid got slashed because he'd lost somebody's lighter, over a lighter, fucking, what is it, like 50p or a pound, got slashed because of a lighter. I remember one guy, he had, there was an iron on the wing, and you could like get the iron from the bubble. The bubble is like an office where they deal with everything. And you could request an iron to iron your clothes if you're going on a visit or something. And they had an ironing board. And I remember one kid, Donny kid, I'm not going to say his name, I think he's dead now. But he might not be actually. But anyway, he fell out with someone and he's put the iron on, right? Got it so it's red hot, went up on top of the balcony, and he was looking over, and this kid who he had beef with, he just shouted at him, and when he looked up, he just dropped the iron. Fucking landed straight on his face. Ruthless. I remember pool balls going all over. There was once a riot on the wing, and there was a Notorious story about one of the screws. I forget who it was, and he had because you used to get these puddings on a Sunday or throughout the week. They call them duffs, and it's like sponge and custard, and somebody had dumped it on his head, and he was just running around the wing with his fucking pudding on his head. And yeah, there was just so much violence, just slashings and people getting burnt over nothing, over trivial things. And I always remember the first time I got there was a kid there, and I can say his name because it's not his real name. This kid called Worm, and I think it was the first time I'd met a killer. And what had happened is he was from Edlow in Doncaster, and I remember coming on the wing, and when I first landed on there, it was all Donny lads, you know, people I used to go to school with. I knew pretty much everybody there. And one of the lads, he was a bit of a bully, you know. If I said his name, you'd all say, oh yeah, I know him. And he was messing with me, you know, and he said, we came on the wing, and he says, oh, that's that kid over there with a bald head. He says, that's a kid called Worm. He said, he's killed someone, he's a murderer. He said, don't look into his eyes because he just goes schizo and starts stabbing people. And I'm fresh, you know what I mean? I'm green as fuck. I was like, fucking hell is it? I believed him. And then, like, he's walking up talking to us. I'm like, trying not to look at him in the eye and fucking... And he's talking, I'm thinking, this is the nicest guy I've ever met. He was such a sweet guy, you know, he was a fucking nice bloke. And then I realised, yeah, he was messing with me. And what had happened is, he'd got jumped by some pretty big names. I can't remember who it was, but it was well known, well respected in Doncaster. And someone had jumped him, and he like defended himself. He was getting battered, and he's pulled out a knife and just stuck him, and he's ended up dying. This guy. So that's what he was in for. He was in for murder, but he was on trial. He was going not guilty, and it's weird in prison because all of us lot, even though he had people after him because the guy was a big name, well respected guy. But you get invested in other people's cases, you know. And we was all invested in this case. He was going not guilty. He had all pictures of where the guy had jumped him and battered him. So he had a pretty good case, but, you know, somebody had died. Somebody had been stabbed to death. And back then, it meant something. Now, nobody, you know what I mean? You could go out with intention, murk somebody in the neck, and you get 2 years suspended sentence for manslaughter. Whereas back then, it wasn't like that. If you broke the law, you paid the price, especially for murder. And anyway, he was on trial, we was all invested in it, and we all thought he's got a good case here, it's 50-50, and then, you know, he was on trial, coming back every day, and then it was the end of the trial, and he went to court, he says, well, this is it, boys, it's either fucking life or, you know what I mean, not guilty or guilty, and he went to court, he never came back, so I'm assuming he got time served, because he had been in for like a couple of years on remand, so, yeah, he must have got out. And yeah, that was the story of Worm. That was the first time I met someone who'd killed someone. And I remember this other kid as well, which I've spoke about it before. He was a right horrible cunt. No one liked him. He killed his cellmate because back then there was a rumour that if your padmate killed himself while you were in the cell, there was a chance you could get bail because of the trauma suffered from seeing your padmate kill himself. So this fucking idiot has killed his cellmate, strangled him, and tried hanging him up as though he'd hung himself so he could get bail from court. And he was in for petrol bombing his wife's car or something, and it caused a lot of damage. So he thought, well, I've got no to lose. So he's got caught straight away. I can't remember exactly what happened. I think somebody saw him doing it or something. And he got caught straight away. And the original charge he was in for, he got not guilty on. So now he's doing life for that murder of the cellmate. It was just fucking stupid, absolutely mental, just so unnecessary. But that's what it's like in prison. You get freaking idiots like that. And I always remember being sat there in the cell. I knew all about him, you know, everybody knew about him. He was on single cell location because they couldn't put him in with somebody else. But he was just free to walk around the wing, and he used to come and sit in my cell, and I'd just be sat there, you know, everyone's talking. I'm just thinking, this guy's fucking killed someone, you know, it's just so surreal. And there's another guy there called Concrete Ken, and he was kind of like Notorious. I think you could probably Google it, and his name would come up. And he just looked like just a normal everyday dude, you know, glasses, he'd be reading the paper and stuff. And he's killed his wife and chopped her head off and buried it in the back garden under a load of concrete, hence the name Concrete Ken. And, you know, and then it was just so surreal how I'm in for fucking shoplifting, you know, doing 8 months for shoplifting, and I'm in a Cathay remand centre with all these killers and murderers and fucking crazy terrorists and just madness. And there was another guy as well, I can't remember, I think his name was Pat, I'm not too sure, Pat, something like that. And he was transsexual, which, again, back then, it was unheard of, especially in prison, because prison is a very homophobic place. I've known people get battered just for being like gay, or you know, people, you see it on TV, like a prison show, every time there's somebody getting bombed in the showers, or you know what I mean, there's somebody like kissing someone in a cell or raping someone in a greenhouse. But in reality, that doesn't really happen. I mean, not from my experience. I'm sure it does happen. But it's not, well, it does happen, I know it does, but it's not common, you know, it's very rare. There's only one time I met someone who got raped by his cellmate, and I think it was in Moreland's prison. I remember his name, and his padmate was doing a long time, and he gave him some Valium, and he ended up knocking him out, and then while he was knocked out over the bed, he just pulled his pants down and took his cheeks, and because of that, they moved him to Doncaster, and everybody knew about it, and everybody used to take the piss out of him, you know, this poor guy who's been raped by his cellmate, and everyone was laughing, and whenever he walked past, everyone would be going, you know, making bed squeaking noise. Fucking ruthless in jail, mate. So, you know, when people say, oh, it's a holiday camp, fucking really tell that to this guy. I'm sure he don't think it's Butlins without a swimming pool. But yeah, it was pretty unheard of to be gay in jail because people just used to beat you up. And this guy, Pat, he was a transsexual and he used to like walk around the wing. He'd have like a bra on, fucking have like a thong on, and it was just bizarre to see, you know, it's just crazy. But this guy, or this girl, Pat, he worked on a survey and he was about that life. He was in for murder, and if anybody messed with him, he'd just take a blade to him straight away. He wouldn't take no shit. And he used to rib all the big top boys on the wing, you know. He'd be like walking past and he'd be going, you go, boyfriend, and all this, you know, doing all that weird gay stuff. And he'd be like, yeah, work it, baby. And they'd look around and be like, sure, you dickhead. But he got away with it because he was a fucking ruthless. He didn't take no shit from no one. But he could have a laugh with him as well. He was on the servery, and you know, all the Donny lads have a bit of a laugh with him. And I remember he'd come out with like a tray of, say, omelettes or hash browns or something, and then be right on the other side of wing, and it'd be like leftovers. You know, does anybody want any of these? And someone would shout, yeah. What's that, hash browns? And he'd come bouncing over and say, yeah, do you want some? I'd be like, no. We're all right, thanks. So, yeah, that's just some of the people that I met in Doncaster when it was a Cat A jail. I don't know what became of Pat, the transsexual. But I'm sure he did his time, did her time. And I think he was doing life. Same as Concrete Ken. I don't know what became of him either. He's probably dead now because he was pretty old back then. But yeah, Donny definitely was a Cat A jail. And even though if you Google it, it comes up, it has different things, you know. It says no, it wasn't, and then in another in the same sentence it says yes, it was. But then it got changed to a Cat B jail. And it was still pretty violent, but it was nowhere near. Because when Doncaster first opened, nobody like knew where the blind spots were. There was a cupboard on every wing in the corner, and it was always open because it had mop buckets and brushes in there. So you need to go in there to get to clean your cell out, and it was always open. So that's where people would go in. They'd attack people. I remember I went past once and there was a guy with his pants down, and there was two Donny lads sticking a broom up his fucking cheeks. And he was screaming. That was one of the blind spots, and there was loads on the visiting room. I remember when I first went there, one of my mates got locked up, and he had 8 for gear stashed, and he asked me to go and get it and take it up. So I went and got it, took it up, and I just walked straight in. I had it in my hand and just threw it across the table. It was so easy. There was people in the visiting room. You could go into the baby change room. And they could have sex in there, you know, the man and the woman go in there to change the baby. The prisoner and his wife will go in there to change the baby, and they could have sex, and they're doing fucking BJs and all sorts in there. And it was rife for drugs because it was so easy to get in, and it was a Cat A jail as well. It was crazy. None of the screws really knew what they were doing, so you could like take your bed in and just go and sleep on another wing. You know, it'd be like sneak over to A wing for the night and then come back to B wing. It was fucking mental. So anybody says, nah, it's not that hard, it's not that tough jail. It was fucking ruthless back then. I'm talking like early 90s, 94, 95 when it first opened, because they just didn't know what they were doing. And just my luck, fucking shoplifter, straight to a Cat A fucking remand centre on the YOs as well. Anyone who's done jail will tell you the YOs is fucking 10 times more crazy on the YOs. I remember the first time I saw a guy on the YOs, Notorious inmate. It was hard as fuck, and he was massive. A guy called Gypsy George. I'll never forget. It was a YO wing, which means he's under 21, and he was like a 40-year-old man. He was fucking huge, and he's opened the door. He had this chef's hat on because he worked on the survey, and I thought he was a screw, because you know what I mean, he looked like a proper full-grown man, and he was ruthless but he was ruthless, but he was fair. You know, I think he was like the wing rep, so if anyone was getting bullied, you could go and see him and he'd sort it out. But if you messed around, he would smash you up. And I used to see him on the bag, and he used to shout, "My name's Gypsy George, and I fight for fun. bosh, and fucking hell, mate, he'd punch the bag. I've never seen anybody hit a bag that hard. Oh, mate, I just couldn't see how anyone could ever win him in a fight, especially on the YOs, maybe on the cons, but not on the YOs. I remember when there was a bully boy on there, and he was just big and daft and loud, you know, look like a Decker Heggie type, you know, just a big thick fucking crash dummy. And he was always like throwing his weight around, and it wasn't like bullying, but it could come across as that. And I remember once I was on the yard and he was messing around, and because he do all that on the YOs, and he grabbed me in a headlock, and Gypsy George just come flying out of nowhere, went smash. He only hits him in ribs. He fucking knocked him up in air, landed on his back, and he was like, ugh. That was his way of saying, listen, stop fucking about, or you're gonna get it. So yeah, and I think the reason why maybe me remembering Gypsy George as such a big, larger than life character is because I was just a YO, you know, and he just looked out of place because he was just so fucking not like a full grown man. And when you're YO, you're young, you know, you're impressionable, and I couldn't see how anyone could win him in a fight. But yeah, anyway, that's Doncatraz, Cathay Jail. Some of the more notorious inmates I met along the way. And yeah, if you like this video, stay out of jail. If you like this video, press the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Never forget,